All right, we are live now with the Colecast podcast with your host, Cole Bovey.
Hello, Internet. As Bruce said, this is the Colecast podcast. We are here this afternoon with my good friend, Gary Cashale. I talked him into this idea a long time ago. I was trying to woo him in with some lunch, but of course he's such a nice guy. He ended up paying for my lunch anyway, even though I'm the one
Cole Bovey.
He's like, no, I insist. And I guess that was that. So now I owe him double lunch for being here and being super awesome. And then Bruce, I just owe my entire life savings because he's just being great. He's a super duper producer from Next Edge Academy, which is where we're at with the studio. So real quick introductory. Gary, correct me if any of this stuff is wrong, but Gary Cashale, master's in counseling, grew up in the Congo, came to America at the age of 7 as a refugee. He also happens to be a super great guy. I know him as a really good Muay Thai striker. He's always really super fun to do that stuff. You dabble in some jiu-jitsu as well. And you also played basketball at USF, right?
I did play, yeah.
And then on top of that, as I said earlier on my site, I said that you are such a nice guy, even though you're an accomplished striker. I wouldn't even get mad if you kicked me upside the head, even if it was by accident. So I'd feel quite honored, to be honest with you. Oh. So, but honestly, thanks for being here. You have a lot of interesting stuff that I would love to pick your brain about. And just as our lunch that we had that one day, it was just an amazing discussion that we ended up getting lost in, basically, just because you were so on top of everything. So, you just have a really cool insight about how just your outlook on life and different things like that, and I appreciate that. So,
well, I can easily say I appreciate you wanting to even have me interviewed in some way.
Sure.
I'll probably have to correct one thing from the thing you said. I think you mentioned pretty nice guy a couple of times. I don't know if that's the most correct way. Yeah, I'm just messing. But again, I'm really honored to be able to be here. Whenever someone wants to get to know me in any way, or even dabble a little bit about what my interests are, I'm always more than happy to be able to discuss them in some way. So, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little nervous though.
Yeah, that's all right. One of the best feedback I got last week was somebody said, "You need to just be Cole because people like Cole." And I'm like, well, not everybody likes Cole, I can assure you that. Or Cole's antics. So even we're here, I still got to pump the brakes on the whole Cole thing. Okay. So all right. It's weird seeing your face on the monitor over there. Bruce had it up when he's like, "Are you nervous?" I'm like, "No, not really." And then all of a sudden I went live and I saw my face on multiple different monitors. I'm like, I got to go to the bathroom, Bruce. But as somebody asked me the other day they're like, it's your first podcast. How was it? And I'm like,
how did it go?
I would consider it a lot kind of let's get a little PG-13, kind of losing your virginity almost.
Okay.
Because you look forward to it.
Yeah.
You have it planned out in your head. You think it's going to be amazing. And then what happens? You freeze up. You have no idea what's happening. And you're like, So the only way you can do it is just hopefully find some good partners to do it with.
A little lackluster for a little bit.
That's you. Unfortunately, Bruce was my first, and hopefully Bruce is still around later. I can be like, look how good I got it, Bruce.
Well, I'll do my best to snuggle with you after.
Yeah, thanks, man.
I'll make sure to keep it cool with you.
So as I said, in the first episode, though, this podcast is about people. It's about life in general, wellness. And hopefully get to know some people and some interesting stuff and have a little laughs on the way. So, hopefully people kind of find the humor in some of that. Like I said, I'll pump the brakes on the Cole and keep it pretty clean and not do anything ridiculous. I got a safe face for Bruce because he's a wonderful guy. And by golly, I want him to keep doing this stuff for me because otherwise I'd be screwed. So, and I got to keep getting some pretty awesome guests, which I still have a bunch lined up. But I am super pumped to have you as my first guest, man.
Awesome. So, appreciate it.
Anyway, let's let's get to know Gary a little bit. What year did you came from the Congo?
I did. So
With your family?
Yeah, we did. Actually, to even clarify that a little bit. So I was born in the Congo, in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, at the time, it was called Zaire.
Zaire, yeah.
And at the time, there was a horrible dictator named Mobutu that was running everything. And my family actually thought it'd be better, more ideal for them to kind of move away from that area and go to one of the neighboring countries. So we left the Congo and went to Burundi, which Burundi is a country that's actually like really connected, close, and it's right next door to Rwanda. So if that's a foreshadowing of what's to come, if anyone knows anything about Rwanda, it'll make sense with what I'm about to say. So we moved to Burundi when I was about, I want to say 4 years old, maybe a little bit younger than that. I can't really remember, but we ended up being in Burundi for a good amount of my time in Africa. Now, while in Burundi, a huge conflict escalated and blew up. It was the same conflict that was happening in Rwanda, but in reverse. So in Rwanda, if anyone knows anything about the genocide that happened there in the early 90s, the Hutu, there were two tribes, Hutu and Tutsi. And in Rwanda at the time, when Belgium was kind of overtaking the area, they had kind of kept one tribe above the other in some way. And when they left, it was kind of a moment for those tribes to start saying, okay, well, now we remember how you guys treated us. It's time for us to come back in your direction. And in Rwanda, Hutus were massacring Tutsi left and right. And so in Burundi, that was one of the big conflicts that were kind of brought into the media, and everyone was just saying, oh my gosh, what's going on down there? In Burundi, something similar was happening actually too. It was kind of the opposite. Tutsi were killing Hutus. While we were there, that's what we were encountering. We were encountering those two tribes warring it out, and it just wasn't a good scene at all. I mean, we remember rebel soldiers being around the area. We remember hearing the fighting that was happening in the cities. We remember certain riots happening because certain people were being overthrown from power. That it came to a point where after a while we ended up being homeless. So while we were homeless, we moved from friend's house to friend's house to friend's house for a couple months, and we found ourselves living in what used to be my old school, but now was abandoned because the government was essentially kind of falling apart.
Okay.
So during that time, my parents were kind of realizing, okay, we're really running out of options. So we either will have to try and find a way to get into a refugee camp and find a way out, or we try and find asylum elsewhere and go to a different country. So my parents went to embassies, started talking to certain people in the government that they knew, and we got lucky and ended up realizing that America was giving asylum to certain people. And so what ended up happening was this is an interesting story. So we had an uncle. I'd consider him an uncle of some sort. I think it's one of those twice removed kind of things.
Sure.
My mother, when he was much younger, used to make food for him. Whenever he'd come home from school, he'd just stop over at our house, and my mom would make food, and he would always tell her, "Oh my gosh, Tantine Therese, you make the best food ever. You know, one day what's going to happen is I'm going to go to America and I'm going to bring you with me so you can cook me food all the time." And so what ended up happening is he ended up moving to Europe and then ended up finding himself in the United States. So when we were trying to find a way to get to the United States, they asked us, well, do you guys have any relatives of any kind at all in the United States that we can place you with?
Sure.
And we found out he was there. He ended up finding out we were trying to get out of Burundi, and he's like, oh my gosh, yes, my family, bring him over. So it's always a funny joke with him that that he ended up getting his dream because he ended up getting my mom to come here and actually cook for him for the time
awesome.
period. Yeah. So that's how, I mean, that's
good things revolve around food.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The source to everyone's happiness.
That's absolutely fascinating, though. I mean, that has a lot to say about your family and their grit, though. Mm-hmm. I mean, it puts a lot of things into perspective if you really think about it, because we get really comfortable here in the States, and I love this place. I love everything about it. I've traveled abroad, done a lot of other things, got to meet a lot of interesting people. But you do soon find out, there's a lot of interesting things that end up happening elsewhere in the world that, if you put it in perspective, like, damn it, my Netflix is down for the weekend. Now what are you going to do? And here your family is sitting there trying to find a way out of this war-torn country or countries. You've been to multiple different areas. And I don't know. It's tough. I did a little bit of homework before we ended up doing this show today, but I wanted to, just because I wanted to really familiarize myself with a few things. So, and like I said, get to know your story. And again, this is just as much for me, for anybody else, but I really wanted to, anything that I can learn about and touch on and go about. So I'm like, all right. See, otherwise I would have even tried educating myself. So a lot of stuff you're talking about, I've at least heard about and kind of familiarized with it. And it's kind of the sweet thing about the old interweb. You can, there's a lot of garbage out there. And you can pick through what you want, but there's a lot of good literature, and at least if you can kind of hear about things, decide for yourself what's out there, what's worth taking in.
Right.
But yeah, as a Marine, I'm like, man, we talk about so many other horrible things, and that wasn't 1994, 1993. That wasn't long ago.
No, it wasn't.
I think I was probably arguing with my mom about maybe getting Ninja Turtles and stuff like that, and doing stuff. And yeah, your family's trying to survive.
Well, that's an interesting thing that you touched up on. I mean, there was still some part of us that our parents still try to keep very much innocent from the nightmares that were happening around us. Our parents still did try to allow us to be children, find some games in the, now looking back, very difficult situation we're in. So when we were living in the school, for example, they would often allow us to play little games inside the classroom, so that way we found some normalcy in the chaos that we were in.
See, that's phenomenal.
Yeah, it really, you didn't understand it at the time, but when you grew up, you started realizing, man, how could I have dealt with that situation if I was in their shoes with children? Nonetheless, being an independent, it would be difficult, but to have kids that you're supporting, and now you're also trying to keep them, from getting jaded from the world. I mean, yeah, they definitely did a great job in it.
Yeah, I don't know. That's super fascinating. I know, you're a big fan of Superman stuff like that. Definitely. But is your dad did you secretly tattoo a big Superman emblem on his chest while he's sleeping at night? Because that's what you should have done. By God, I mean, it's just amazing. Yeah, hats off to them, seriously. And it's, I know I could speak on behalf of many, many people, and even right now, the lives you're touching with your counseling and stuff like that. You're, without having some sort of refugee system, and I get it. People are nervous. There's a lot of crazy stuff happening, and people could easily point the fingers and do what they have to do. But I know people from Syria. I know a couple of physicians from Syria, and they're two of the best people I've ever met in my life. But I think with the media and stuff like that, ironically, here we are on the media talking about things. But fight fire with fire, I say.
Well, and the interesting thing with that, actually, I think you touched on something when you talked about what we find on the web and what's useful and what's not. It's always, for me, I always found it interesting because whenever people would talk about the conflict that we found ourselves in, it was always Rwanda. I always heard what's happening in Rwanda, and we were just yeah, that's really bad, but that's happening here too. And the body count wasn't, I don't think, anywhere near the same level, for sure, but I still felt like it was very traumatic what was going on in Burundi at the time. And I always found it interesting that I feel like certain people hold the keys to what narrative will be played out.
Right.
And for me, sometimes, especially in the climate that we live in right now, one of the biggest narratives is, hey, the whole, and not to even go on a political route, I promise I'll keep it away from that, but it's very much,
we can talk about whatever.
Well, it's very much this idea of, the outsider. And that it's interesting because people always try and say that this whole refugee immigrant situation is something that's only central to what's happening in the United States. I think that was very much also what was going on when I was a kid, because it was very much this idea of, this tribe is not us. Because they're not us, we need to harm them completely or keep them away from us. And that kind of hatred, I saw what it spiraled out into. I saw how dark people can get when you just allow yourself to no longer see your brother as another human being or your sister as another human being. And I mean, it's frustrating, it's terrible. And I really do commend you having a moment to be able to actually take time to actually learn more about it, to be able to see that, hey, this situation is or your sister as another is very real, and there's more than one side to the story.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's a pretty heavy topic, but it should be. And like I said, most people, especially, to the probably 50-some people might listen to this right now, but hopefully it'll spread the word a little bit, or, at least one person might be like, I want to check that out. I want to read up on that a little bit. Like, did that stuff seriously happen? Because I know, like I said, I kind of knew about it, but then in the end, like, I started like, oh man, seriously? And
read as much as you can.
And like you said, don't depress yourself about with the things that are happening in today's world, but you can totally educate yourself.
Definitely.
And again, bring people together and try to learn from that stuff and try to go from the history and not hide from it. I think that's a really huge thing.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's totally real quick while I get thinking about this, but Bruce could or you could correct me on it. Justin Wren with Remembering the Forgotten, like he's helping the pygmies, the MMA fighter. So he's helping teach people drill wells.
Oh yeah, you told me about
I
this.
couldn't remember where he's doing it, but basically, instead of teaching somebody going over there and just getting a crew of people and all the equipment just drilling, instead he's like, give a man a fish, eat for a day, teach a man to fish, eat for life. He totally took by that, and he's like, all right, I'm going to go over to Africa. I'm going to take some engineers from America and do some other stuff like that. And he ended up basically putting together this team of people, teaching a few of the people from the tribes, getting them together where they're walking miles and miles and miles trying to get the water, teaching them how to drill, how to mark out their own spots, do stuff like that. And he actually ended up, I can't remember which country he ended up crossing over into, but it was a lot of bad blood, like you said, between the tribes, stuff like that, and they're crossing over, doing a few things. Well, of course, they're checking the equipment, and they thought like something was a bomb, but then there actually was like some sort of, I can't remember exactly what happened. Or there was a cab driver from, when they crossed over to the other country, the cab driver from that country ran over a local, and that local passed away. So, of course, they took that as like, and it was horrible, bad situation, everything got taken away. They thought their equipment was bomb equipment, and it was just a whole nasty thing. Of course, the cab driver lied about it. But in a real cool, like, circle of events, the community came together, and even though there was, like, some bad blood and riff, and people just kind of had to figure it out and be like, settle down. Everybody settle down. Justin and his team apologized even though it wasn't their fault, and they ended up doing everything they can together, and they ended up working together with these two different teams of engineers from rivalry tribes, and now they're drilling wells together and stuff like that. Justin Wren, there he is.
See, that's a beautiful story that you described, and it could have escalated to
such an amazing
places.
Guy. He fights on Bellator now, but he's like this gigantic man. Yeah, he's a heavyweight, but he just has the smoothest, softest, nice voice. I know Joe Rogan's put out a bunch of stuff, but yeah, he's got, they can donate a lot of things. And he talks about their will to thrive and stuff like that. He's like, you got to be careful with these charities, and people come in and, you can give them tons and tons and tons of rice or whatever you need, flour to go ahead and do that. Well, you oversaturate the market with that. What's going to happen is you end up with the bad guys taking all the stuff and then selling it for way cheaper. And then you got the guy that has their farm and doing whatever, and now they can't compete with the prices with the guy that took all the free stuff, and they're selling it for all that extra money and stuff like that. And
I mean, especially in those areas, corruption is just a way of life, and it from the time you were born.
And I think it's a dog eat dog world, isn't it? In the developing countries, which is, I get it, absolutely get it, and that's why I think it's super fascinating that, like you said, you guys didn't have any education or anything like that, and you ironically ended up living in your old school, which was empty and abandoned, and you guys were just bouncing around, and coming to now, how educated you are and stuff. I know you're humble and you're like, I'm not that smart. But any fool that's listening to this for 5 minutes can tell Gary's a very well-spoken, smooth voice. Honestly, I'll probably just listen to his voice as I go to bed every night, just so I can go to bed with a smile on my face. Yeah, if you just didn't get married recently and my wife wasn't around in the picture,
Sorry.
there'd be some conversion going on there, buddy.
Hey,
Whether you liked it or not.
I feel like I wouldn't have much of a choice in that situation, Cole. I feel like I wouldn't have much of a choice.
That just got real dark. But seriously, man, you're a beautiful, beautiful human being. So you ended up coming over to the States then. What led you to Sioux Falls?
Well, that's where my uncle, his name was Piero. Well, I think in the English translation would be Pierre, would be how you would say, or Pierre is how you'd say it in English. But he was living here in Sioux Falls. And so this was the only logical place they wanted us to stay in. And they thought, because they assumed, well, stay with him. They'll find a way to be able to indoctrinate you in what the American culture looks like. And hopefully from there, you guys can, be naturalized and be positive members of society.
Yeah.
And so,
which I think is huge when you come as an immigrant. I would expect it. And to see what your family's done and to be given the opportunity, they ran with it. I know there's like a lot of negative stigma about the refugees and stuff like that. But first of all, I get it. Like you said, they come from, depends on where they came from, what they had. Luckily, you had some great people in your life that kept your head on straight, because I could easily see how you could get jaded and like absolutely be like, well, we're not accepted here. What's the problem there? Or like this other thing, this is how the rest of the world is. Well, I come in different. What's happening? But your parents took a positive spin on that negativity and really did something beautiful with it.
And the funny thing about that is actually, you touched on a lot of things that were very big temptations when we came here to the United States, which was like from when I was younger, I had especially in the African culture, I feel like anyone who's listening to this that is African has a good understanding that what we value down there is like someone who's wealthy. So someone who my father always I still remember this when I was young, would always tell me, hey, you see the person with the suit and tie and the nice car, aspire to be that. He only got there through education. And so you always are told, well, as long as I can look like that. So like the Conor McGregor look, that is what you want to look like. It was never anything else. So when I come to the United States, though, all of a sudden I'm presented an image of what actual successful black looks like. And it was a different image from what my father said, which was athlete, hip hop artist, something that the mainstream media will accept.
Yeah.
And so for me, especially,
this is what I need to be. All right.
Exactly. No, it really very much so. And for a lot of immigrant children, that is very confusing, because you're starting to see that the image that your parents have portrayed for you guys might not be what everyone else is accepting. And at the time, especially when you're young, the only thing you want to have is be accepted by your peers.
Right.
And so for me and a lot of my friends, it was, okay, well, I better be good at sports. I better be good at entertainment. I better be good at this other thing that is considered black, because I want to be accepted, not this other thing that my culture says is important. And so it was, when I was younger, it was very much a struggle to be able to assess what was really important for me and really what wasn't. It wasn't, and sadly I had to learn it the hard way. And the hard way was sometimes watching my friends go down a path that other people told them was the right way to go, seeing them fail and say, oh man, no, maybe that's not the right direction to go at all.
Yeah, I've had some of that as well. Like I'm still really close to a lot of my friends, and even I respect a lot of my childhood friends just for certain stuff they did, but there's some that, you end up inevitably going your own separate ways, but did a few things, but they've self-admittedly made a few mistakes, but they're also trailblazing, doing their own things. And they're fascinating guys. Like that's what I loved about like all my friends. They're just like the most colorful personalities and like super brilliant, like wrist in wherever you are out there. Spearfish, I know, but man, he's one guy that influenced me, and he super academic. He's one of the guys, just like my other friend Andy that we grew up with, that those guys partied pretty hard, but they worked even harder. Right. And they're just one of those guys that are just like, the rules don't apply, man. Let's do whatever. But then like they get in trouble, and then they're like, well, you're a really good student. Yeah. So they wanted to nail and be like, you're a bad student.
Right.
But that was one of the things for me, like, if they got in trouble or they're just doing something that was a little bit different, they never pressured. And they're just like, these things happen, and they just moved on with it. But I think that is something that is huge in just today's youth, especially with the media outlets, is, you got to decide what's important, what's not with your friends
definitely.
And your peers, and decide. And in the end, yeah, that does shape your youth, but your past doesn't predict what your future is going to be.
Completely agree
and
with
you
that.
can, we could do something ridiculous right here and right now,
Yep.
but then walk out of the room, and our next decision will dictate what's going to happen from there on out. So,
Very true. No, very true. I completely agree with that. Yeah.
especially it depends on how things will be misconstrued.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
So you ended up going to Lincoln, right?
I did Lincoln
you-
High School.
Did you think of Lincoln?
I loved it. Yeah, I mean,
Everybody I know that went there, like,
Yeah.
had a great time, great education,
I
did a
mean,
few things.
the Patriots way. I mean, that's just the place to be. Lincoln High School was so much fun. We had, especially during the time, we had a pretty good set of staff around, and we were when I was there, we weren't great at sports, so we were just a bunch of people who just kind of saw each other as, all right, we're just going to enjoy our time here. We don't really have these expectations that we have to live up to. Whereas at the time, Roosevelt and O'Gorman were powerhouses that. And, we could go into a game, lose, but we're going to have fun later that night because we already knew we were going to lose. So I met a great group of friends there. Some of them are still real good friends to this day. So it's, LHS was, that's like my second home.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm glad to hear that.
Oh, yeah.
How
love
was
it.
your, speaking of which, like, how did being a part of athletics and, just being a part of those groups, or even just coming to like someplace like Next Edge here and being a part of martial arts, how'd that like help shape your life and getting around peers or navigating certain things? Like you said, man, it's a slippery slope out there and you can take it one way or the other. Whenever I'm helping somebody in a boxing class or something like that, or a striking class, especially I ask somebody, I'm like, why are you here?
Yeah.
You got some little excited guy and he's just like, I'm here to learn how to kick ass, take names.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, well, that's cool. What's going on? I've just been bullied and like, I'm just not going to take it anymore.
There you go.
That's
There you
okay.
go.
But I said, the one thing I want you to walk out of here with is that, just because you walk into a gun shop, you buy that pistol, doesn't mean you're going to go out and start hosing the first people that you see just because you have the power, right?
Yeah.
And every time I'd get the same look and they're just like, well, of course not. And I'm like, these right here, they're your loaded guns.
Exactly.
Like, they may be able to do something like that. You may hit somebody, nothing will happen. Something will happen, you break your hand, and they'll walk off laughing at you. Regardless, something bad came out of that. And it's just kind of like the whole samurai way. Like, it's you got to learn how to use that stuff and when to use it. And, the master samurai is the guy that knows everything that they need to do to be a champion, to win, take people out. But the real samurai is the guy that ain't going to actually fight and have to use it because they can overcome that stuff. So, and that's one thing I love about like the martial arts scene. Cause like when I first came in, that was the first thing that was intimidating. Cause like, there's all these killers guys and like you look at them and you're like, oh man, and here I am, like this dude with a donut around my belly because it's full of donuts. And then like I'm seeing guys like you that are shredders, six pack, stuff like that. And then like these other gigantic guys like Bruce is like an accomplished jiu-jitsu artist and everything else and coach and knows all these who's who of the MMA world. And I'm sitting there like, I don't know if I belong here. But then I'll find out like everybody's like the coolest, sweetest people ever. And then, like they just all have the same mantra of like, we're in it for the sport and relationships. So,
well, and a good amount of us, I won't doubt, are in it for the same things, which is just that we want to be able to, deal with some of the insecurities that we sometimes feel pervade our lives. I know for me, with jumping into martial art, I had the same exact mindset because when I walked in the first time, it was Ben Kuchlong. I mean, Ben now in the UFC, of course.
He's fighting this weekend.
Yeah.
UFC Auckland. Fox Sports 1. Watch it.
At Ben 10, I hope you pull it off. Like, you're going to be doing big things this weekend.
Definitely.
So, I mean, that's who I walked in and saw was him. Shayna was there. And obviously Bruce was looming in the background too. And so I'm terrified out of my mind the whole entire time. And I'm just like, hey, I just don't want to bother anyone. Can you guys just maybe teach me how to punch and kick something? And then I'll walk out the door. I swear I'll give you all the money you need. And I had the same response, which were people who were like, no, come on in. We want to hang out with you. We're completely friendly, everything like that.
This is when I was sold, not to, sorry to interrupt you,
No,
but, I was, well over 100 pounds overweight at the time. And, you go to one of like Aaron Pollard's classes or Shayna's class, you're walking out, you're not walking out, you're limping out. And not because you got beat up, but because you're exhausted. So I'm like, dying walking out of there. And like at the end of the thing, we're doing our push-ups, and at the end, we want to finish push-ups, and that's the key. Like finish your push-ups, and I was so mad at myself because I couldn't finish my push-ups, and like my push-ups were terrible. I couldn't even hold myself up. I can't remember. I think it was the tooth. That was one of the guys that were around, right, Bruce? Yeah, he come over, grabs me by chubby love handles and hips, and everybody gets around me, Shane and stuff, and they're like, and they got around me, and even though they were done with their push-ups, they helped take the weight off me, and all got down and finished out my last push-ups with me.
Beautiful.
So that's one of those things where I'm like, that is what a community is about, and that's what. And we all have like different walks of life, but in there it didn't matter. We're just on the mat doing our thing. So
no, definitely. And as long as you had kind of the same vibe, which is a positive one, you could be completely included. And I mean, it's interesting when you're talking about like the push-up thing, where you were so mad at yourself. I think you hit on the point of why one. Of a very important lesson that I learned in sports that I had to translate to martial arts that I think has made me enjoy martial arts more. Like when I played basketball at Lincoln, I was always incredibly hard on myself. Like every single time, I always made, to me, every mistake, I magnified it times 10. And it forced me to, force myself to really be invested in the game, but at the same time also it didn't allow me to enjoy it as much as I could because I always just saw my flaws. And so when I came to do martial arts, one thing I had learned prior in basketball was that if I take this incredibly seriously, I'm going to fail because I'm never going to see anything positive from that. So now in martial arts, I try my best to be able to have as much fun as I can, to be as relaxed as I can, because if I ever find myself in that serious mode, I can do it. It's possible. It just won't be fun at all. And it won't
be fun. You set yourself up for failure, and you cloud your judgment.
Exactly.
That was kind of one of the, this is words I held on to forever that Bruce had said, because I was helping out with it was a kickboxing match.
Okay.
And Bruce was cool enough to let me come in and help warm up the guys, do some stuff. And somebody's talking about just get mad and do it. And Bruce is like, nah, you never want to go in mad. He's like, never go into a fight mad. It's the worst thing you could ever do. He's like, you lose all of your train of thought. And I'm like, that's not even just for fighting. Like that's for life in general. Yes. And I can assure you, everybody's like, happy-go-lucky Cole. Woo! Look at him go. He's gonna do the Chris Farley dance and rip off his pants and run around the party like that's still
sign me up. I'm coming to see that.
Joke's on you. Underneath this table right now, I was sitting when you walked in. There was no pants.
Oh.
Bruce told me, that's the great part about the gym life is you got to take off your shoes, and it's kind of freeing not to have your shoes on. But I just decided, you know what, it feels weird being here with jeans on, so off they go.
Why not? So, we're only seeing the top portion of it anyway, so it's all good.
So again, we keep this PG-13. I'll stay sitting for now. You can watch the B-roll for the good stuff.
Oh, yikes. Okay. Hey.
It's a hot, sweaty day, too, man. I am wet where I'm not supposed to be.
Okay.
So, anyway, moving forward. We, talking about, wellness and keeping control and doing that stuff, and you talked about your education. So you came here, and you ended up getting your master's degree, which, hell, I'm $40,000 in debt yet. Still don't even have my... associates, so we'll get there one day. I'm reading, doing my thing. So you ended up coming here, getting your master's, and counseling, and some of your specialties that you have are depression, anxiety, grief and loss, couples therapy, adolescence conflict, and then the multicultural counseling with immigrant and refugee population, which is awesome, and nobody could relate to that better than you. And I have such admiration, even for my wife, stuff like that come from a different country, different language, everything else, and show up here and become excellent functioning professionals. And here I am, born, smack dab in the middle of Midwest, and I still haven't, I've done a few things, but I haven't accomplished things with, education wise, and I figured it out. But again, that's not beating yourself up. You just got to keep.
What's this?
I recognize you pretty bad. Oh, my sister.
Oh, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So maybe we could. Maybe we should have a counseling session on that about how
That was cute. Hey, hey, that's sibling.
Shout
right
out
there.
to Lee and
I was
everybody
gonna
else like
say.
that. Oh, speaking of which, big wedding this weekend. James Crone, Ashley Schultz. Happy to be a part of your wedding. See you tomorrow. Good
okay.
luck. When things go south, you can come talk to Gary.
I'll be right. I'll be right.
Things
available.
will not go south. Trust me. They are the sweetest couple on the planet. If anything, you will watch and be like, hey, there's a couple good little folks there.
I was gonna say.
But anyway, you know, you ended up getting into mental health, which that stuff's like huge for me, and like grief and loss, actually. You know, that stuff I love to dabble in, not because I want to, because it's a difficult situation, and just mental health altogether. But there's so much. I can seriously, I know Bruce like only has so much time. He has so much time, and my wife will say, Cole can't shut the hell up. But I will be
My
here.
wife's the same way.
So we're a terrible duo. We should just start a show together, and then
It'll be like 8 hours long, and
yeah.
people will just like cut off after 4. But yeah,
if it's just really important stuff, and I feel like mental health is the key thing, and you know, just as wellness together. You know, everybody wants to lose weight, everybody wants to be in shape, everybody wants to do a thing, but once you get your mental health in order and change your mindset about things and getting help, and everybody needs help one way or the other. You know, something I don't talk about a lot of people, but like I said, I used to lose my temper a lot. You know, I've dealt with my own mental health stuff, and the thing is I've been in healthcare for a while, you know, and just I'm entry level, but I've been a part of this stuff, you know, for about 11 years, and luckily had great mentors and other people around me, and you know, deal with patients on the street, and worked in the ER and ICU and stuff like that. And my favorite part was connecting with people and just talking to them and figuring it out, and especially when they're having a terrible time and they think that's it. But if you can get them to open up, start talking about these things and get in control of it, they start to navigate things better. And that's what I figured out. So here I was, the car mechanic that's fixing everybody else's cars, but I wasn't fixing my own, you know.
that's a really good analogy.
So,
I like that. Yeah.
You know, I'm driving around this piece of crap breaking down all the time. That piece of crap's right between my ears. And now it's a mid-90s Civic, you know, it's not terrible, but reliable.
That's a pretty good car.
Yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah.
So, if for me is to like take it seriously, go and get that stuff figured out. And then once I started doing that, other stuff started figuring out, and I kept like setting myself up like for failure because I wanted to strive for success. What did that word mean, success? So I'm like, success is like you said, all that money in the world, everything else. But like now I look at it, I'm like, I'm still a pretty successful guy. I've got a lot of good people, got a great family, super awesome wife. You know, I got great friends like you, Bruce, Aaron.
What else could you want?
I could go forever. My wife gets super irritated because I go anywhere and like I end up talking to somebody that I know, and she's like, "Oh, for the love of God, Cole!" Like honestly, and then she like walks off, and you know, she's not as chatty as I am about certain things. But yeah, we'll be in the Mall of America. I was in Detroit Airport, ran into somebody I knew, Amsterdam. Yeah. You know, so it's just like, you know, I just got good friends around me. Like, you just got to have that around. Just be nice to people. It's all you need. But, you know, and some of these people helped lift me up, and, you know, I ended up taking care of some of that stuff. You know, I went to some dark places, and unfortunately, but, you know, I talked about it, and I still like go see somebody about it and manage my stuff. It took me a few times, and as you know, in the literature I've read, you know, for most people to get their mental health and like some of the depression, anxiety, and stuff like that, when the situation's handled, it might take them 2 or 3 times, you know, to go for it.
True.
And that's what it did for me. Like I got way over medicated initially, and then didn't see anybody, didn't follow up on it. And now this time, especially now that I've gotten to know more people in the mental health world, you know, I'm like, oh, so there's a difference between this and that and these people, and then connecting to somebody and getting on it. And I just needed to work slowly towards it. Yes. It was kind of like weight loss stuff. Like you just work slow, go through it, still enjoy the finer things of life. It's okay to have the peaks and valleys, but just figure out what needs to be taken care of, because you don't want to be as, you know, opaque as this wall behind me. You got to have that color. You need to have the things that are develop your personality.
Well, it's actually interesting because you actually use an analogy that I often use with my clients. You know, whenever they come in to see me, I always want to highlight to them, hey, this is one, you've clearly taken a huge step being able to come to someone else to be able to help you with something that you are saying, I can't figure out on my own. And so that's huge. And I always tell people that the analogy I use is that I always tell them that I'm kind of like a personal trainer. Okay. You have a specific weight loss goal that you have in mind, or you have a specific image goal that you want. You want abs like, Channing Tatum, arms like The Rock.
I do. It's just, I keep them concealed.
Hey, that's, it's there somewhere. We can sculpt them out.
I don't want to intimidate people,
Right.
but, it's just a thing I can do.
Right. And in those situations, like when you go to a personal trainer for that stuff, he'll say, hey, okay, I think we can go somewhere there. Here's your meal plan. Here is a workout routine. You'll work out with me once in a while. And then I hope that you can go home and do your diet.
Yes.
Now, for some people, though, it would be completely ludicrous if they paid for a personal trainer, did the workout with him, and then went home and ate tons of Burger King and just trashy food, and then come back to the personal trainer and say, whoa, how come I haven't gotten the results I wanted? People just don't think that way.
Right.
And so when it comes to mental health, I always want to let my clients know that, some of the most work that will ever be done in terms of working on your mental health is going to be away from me, because the day you can fire me is the best day of my life, because that means, one, you've gotten something from me. Two, you're able to actually use some of the techniques that we've worked on together on your own, and you've figured out a new way to be able to process some of this. You've fixed the car in some way. You've gotten the muscle. Now, decide if you want to maintain it for the rest of your life, and that's all on you.
You need to decide what you need to hold yourself accountable, because it's not fair to you as the practitioner to be like, Gary, fix me. I need everything to be done.
That happens
You're
quite
in
a
control.
bit. Yeah.
Well, I did that because you didn't help me. What are you here for? And again, it takes two to tango in that sense. And it's just like a successful marriage or any successful relationship. And that patient-client relationship, I think, is absolutely important to maintain. And they need to be ready. And that was the thing for me. I wasn't ready before. And I think the tough thing for me when I started finally talking to somebody is it really brought up all these emotions. And I think one of the reasons why I had such a bad temper about stuff is because it was just a primal, it was like a toddler reaction. It was such a primal reaction for me that I knew it wasn't right. I couldn't figure it out. I was mad and I wanted to get stuff going. And like, I just, you know what? I'd just lose it. And then I would decide like, that was the way for me to show the world too, is like breaking some inanimate object or getting into whatever, just losing my cool and looking like complete jackass in front of everybody and just going bananas. And then of course at the end I'd feel a little better. I'd call like the runaway train, the coal train, if you will.
I see what you did.
So
I see what you did there.
now the coal train is much more efficient, and I'm hydroelectric and I'm just chugging along doing my thing. And it's whenever I feel frustrated, I used to take it as a sign of strength to lose my stuff like that, but now it's a sign of strength for me to be like, all right, Gary, I feel you.
Take that
I
deep
feel you.
breath.
I get where you're at. All right, man. Well, I'm gonna come and talk to you a little bit later. And like, I think my wife and I, we used to badger at each other and stuff like that, and it sucks because she's so much smarter than me. But we would go back forth, and we'd start arguing, we'd start raising, and of course, like, I would start raising my voice, and we'd just badger about the dumbest things. But then when we just got used to that cadence, but then when I started getting my stuff figured out, we'd start kind of at that, and she'd like I'd step it up, and then she'd like come at me a little bit, but then I'd be like, all right, like, let's just figure it out and whatever. And you could tell where she was just kind of like
confused. Yeah, because an actual change has occurred now.
Yeah.
And that's something that I always even want to tell
and it wasn't that it was her way of doing it. It was just because I brought it out of her, because I would instantly come back and just be like,
well, and
you're smarter than me, so I'm going to yell louder.
Right. Well, and I think you also touched on something that's big with mental health is that a change will happen when you come see me. For the most part, something will happen. And at times people always have this idea of, man, if I make this change, if I stop drinking, if I stop, doing these drugs,
they want the one simple fix.
If I get it, everything will be all right. And what they don't realize is you've now affected other people who know you a certain way.
Right.
And some of those people might not even be ready for that change to happen. So being able to also process what's it going to look like for other people to look at me and say, whoa, why didn't you freak out? And test that almost and cross some boundaries to be able to get the old reaction from you. Because as weird as it sounds, sometimes people are more willing to be in the comfortable zone than in the positive changed zone. Yeah. I know half of the people that I see, a good amount of them would, changing from what's comfortable is the hardest part. And I get that.
Yeah.
That's normal for anybody.
Well, one thing I've like, I don't remember if I read it or heard it, like, you know, the sum of your personality is that, you know, the theory is the thumb of the 5 people that you have closest in your life.
Okay.
You know, you kind of leech out off of each other. But then you think about it, that kind of leads into other stuff. No, you're good. I did it last week and I nailed it hard right at the end, so I'm sure I blew out some eardrums. So that's why I'm certain Bruce gave me this mic stand now, so I didn't have to bang on the boom on the other one. But whatever you're putting out there is what you're contributing to the society and contributing to the world. And, you know, you can walk around being that angry jackass, or you can take it and be like, all right, like, yeah, I'm taking in some of that stuff, and it becomes tough because you do become comfortable around the people that you are. But if you can get out and network and meet some other decent people, they're going to take some of that personality with them, and you're going to take it with you. And, you know, if you're around somebody that's poisonous, that poison is just going to poison your blood, and you're going to get sick with some of that bad stuff. And you can sit there and just enable each other with some of that bad stuff. And it's really hard because there are a lot of people out there that have a controlling personality that's going to take advantage of somebody who's might be trying to figure out their path. But and I get it. And like I said earlier with you, when you came over here as a refugee, you could have taken that stuff from the Congo and taken that anger with you, and then come over here, face some challenges, do some things, and instantly become. Instead, you took the complete opposite from your parents. Not from your parents. Your parents did the right thing. They made you a positive guy and kept it positive in a horrible, horrible situation, and end up, you know, taking that and contributing to society and really doing something super admirable and difficult. Sitting one-on-one with somebody who may or may not want to be helped and trying to navigate what you can do to help them, you know, live a more happy life. So
I try my best, but I always tell the people that I see that the biggest tool of change will always be themselves. Like I can only essentially show them a door. They'll have to be the ones to open it, and I will do my best to be the best cheerleader, best encourager in that moment.
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe hopefully help them see certain things that they can't see themselves, and in vice versa, have them be able to help me understand what it is like to be them, and from there maybe make some changes. So yeah, I appreciate that the validation you're giving me about what I've done in my life. It's always awesome to be able to hear someone be happy for the things that I'm doing. Usually with some of the teenagers I see, I usually get them to tell me to F off half the time. So it's always good to be validated by other people.
Well, that's just because they're teenagers. Though. I mean, I think you're the nicest guy in the world, but if I was a teenager, I'd do the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
Who's this guy? What? You know, because you're clouded by stupid thoughts of everything else. And it's a difficult time to be a teenager. I couldn't imagine going through it. Like, I was an awkward kid anyway. Like, I'm lucky to have the friends that I have and the friends that I had growing up.
Now you have social media constantly
judging now it's everything else.
It's tough.
Yeah, it's hard to get away from the garbage, stuff like that. But, you know, talking about the mental health stuff, like the stigma around it, I think it's interesting. And that's like one of my big things I wanted to talk to you about. There's so much going on in today's world and everything else. Like, you know, it wasn't appropriate not too long ago to even talk about these things. Like, you know, like my mom said, her mom had anxiety issues and stuff, but they just called it the nerves. You had the nerves. That's what you had, the nerves. She just got the nerves.
Or depression, just call it the blues.
Yeah, you just got the blues, man. You got the blues. You know, just cheer up. Things will get better. But also, you get so embarrassed to even talk about these things, which is funny because I have people come out and tell me that they have the grossest thing happening with their body. But they will tell me that the most horrible things are coming out of the most horrible areas that you can imagine, and just be completely okay about it. And even though, like I said, I'm a pretty entry-level guy with the medical field with stuff, but I'm interested enough where I read up on a few things and have great people to lean on. But try to talk about like a little bit, like, hey, I think you might like have a little anxiety going on. Like, you know, you're not sleeping at all night, and this has been going on for years, and you wake up feeling tingling. Like, you know, those are classic signs of some stuff, and like I can actually relate to that. Like, you know, when I see somebody have the flu, you be like, you probably have the flu or food poisoning. I'm not a doctor, but I can assure you, I've seen it before. I've had it. it's safe to assume you probably could get something taken care of. And people are like, oh, yeah, I've had the worst diarrhea for 5 days now. And you're right. Instead, they'll tell me all about that, what it looked like, the consistency, how many times they've gone, everything else. But, you talk about these things, and it's kind of like, and not talking about it. I don't want to hear about it, don't want to fix it. And, like, that was one of the best things for me is to be like, I'm going to address this stuff. And, I almost feel like that it could be as big – a good mental health screening would be as helpful as to have it annually as it would be to get your annual physical, because things change. People go through different ups and downs. And also, I'm not saying like everybody needs to be medicated, see somebody, but there might be some stuff that you could get kind of addressed and then talk to a specialist and get some stuff figured out. But that's just, reimbursements are getting a little bit better, I think, for people, and they're able to go see lovely counselors such as yourself, or psychologists, psychiatrists, and things like that. It's the other thing, people educate yourself on what the difference is in the different specials. But, and it's important to find the level that you need. Yeah. And like for me, like I said, things are going pretty well, but I like to just kind of keep things tuned up and just walking in and be like, hey, here's stuff going on. Am I on the right track, feeling this? And then I start talking about something that's been actually irritating me, but I didn't even realize it. But it's a pretty important subject, and it just helps keep me level-headed and be like, all right, I'm on the right direction. So,
well, I think something that you touched on something really important, the stigma that comes with it, right? I mean, when it comes to, I think there's so many variables that hit on the reason why my profession is incredibly stigmatized. But two that I always think that
everyone always thinks people are only in mental health because they need it themselves.
Yes, that's a big one. I think for me, the two that have been very big for other people from coming in to see me has been, one, we don't really know much about mental health. I will say that when it comes to us as mental health practitioners, we've gotten to know quite a bit, but Freud's work only started in 1920s, 1930s, so that's not even that long.
It's relatively young.
We're I don't even know if we're barely coming close to 100 years old with that. And moving forward past that, some of the other theories that popped up since with Adler, Skinner, and all those guys, a lot of them were still very much experimenting on what the human psyche and the human mind was really all about. And so a lot of it is, whereas with the medical profession, a lot of the people, it's been around for so many years that it's just accepted in society. And with the second thing that I always just feel like has really kind of brought on the stigma in my field has been what media says about it. If you ever hear anything on the media about mental health or mental health illness or mental health practitioners,
they automatically picture a guy running around in a tutu, throwing bananas at a wall, and sniffing their own hand.
Or even something more relative now. When you see in films, it's something crazy has happened. Something, and I hate that word particularly because it's so dismissive as to basically lump whatever issue or problem that you're having with other people's. Yep. It throws away and doesn't do justice to what's actually going on in the situation. And so when people see the media and how it's portrayed, when people see that people who have mental health issues or illnesses are people who gun down their coworkers, for them, they don't want to associate themselves in those particular categories. And for me, it's so frustrating because those are incredibly extreme cases. The same way not everyone who goes to the hospital is someone who's dying of something like, God forbid, cancer. But you go to the hospital to be able to check up whether or not you've had a cold or something like that. Not everyone who always comes to see me as someone who is dealing with an infidelity in a relationship, or is at the last straw in the relationship, or is struggling from issues of suicide or something like that. Sometimes people just come in because they're saying, hey, I just lost my girlfriend of 3 years and I'm really struggling with it. I'm having a hard time being able to just move on.
Can you help me navigate?
Yeah.
It's about, again, it's just like going to your family physician.
True.
You're keeping up your wellness, your mental wellness. And I think that's a big part of the health, is that you got to take everything, as a whole and doing these things. And that was probably one of the key changes for me. Like, I'm coming up on almost 100 pounds weight loss.
Oh, congrats,
but,
man.
One of the things for that was, like, not everybody always wants to know what my secret is and stuff like that. And, it's, Bruce is giving me the 4-minute gang sign. Wrap it up, dog. So we're going to end on a bit of a bombshell, but basically, like, I ended up, and I talked to you about this, but you know, I've struggled with my weight, and a lot of that was because of my mental health. I do believe that, and I blame a lot of myself for like not controlling that, and food was my drug. But you know, I'd do these fad diets, other things like that, tied together, and then finally, I'm like, you know what? I got to do something different, and I was pushing. You know, my dad had an MI at age 50 something, which is really young. And I'm like, I'm not going down that route. And I know he wouldn't want me to either, nobody else. And I got great kids, so I'm going to be around for it. I ended up going and getting consulted. I ended up getting a gastric sleeve, which basically just makes your stomach smaller because I stretch my stomach out all the time. And it was just huge. Now they just made it like a little bit smaller than normal person size, but it's going to grow back into a regular size. No rerouting of the guts, intestines, anything like that. And that was a big help, but it took a lot of work. And I had to lose so much weight on my own before I did it. And on top of that, they wanted me to take care of my mental health.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm looking forward to it, actually. And they denied me initially because of my mental health so bad, because I did my screening, and I was 100% completely honest with it. And they're like, Cole, you're not ready yet, but we're going to work through this and get it ready. I'm like, that's cool. I'm actually happy you said I'm not ready, because I want to do this. I want to be successful. And I've had a great network of people around me. And, you know, taking care of that's been huge. And then once I started losing weight, doing stuff, and I put in a lot of work. I get up, you know, after my wife, she gets at 4:30. I'm at the gym about 5:45, 5:30. Hammer it out 6 days a week, sometimes twice a day. We go every Saturday together and just go bananas.
That's lovely.
And eating
That's
clean,
nice.
because, you know, you can talk to anybody around this stuff. Yeah, you can put on weight in a hurry with it. Like, you can relapse in a hurry.
Very true.
But, you know, I'm never going back. But it was a gift, and I'm going to promise myself that I had a lot of people work hard on me, including my wife, to be around it. So, you know, and I'm going to use this as a gift. I'm going to keep going, and I want to let people do it. So
Awesome, man. I love to hear stuff like that. That's beautiful.
Anyway, you know, we're going to start wrapping this up. Gary,
Of course.
I'm going to have you on again because we have so much more to talk about. I hope everybody really enjoyed it. Again, I want to thank... I would like to thank Next Edge Academy. I'd also like to thank my friend Curtis at Ink and Iron Tattoo. Go see him. Travis with 6AV. And, you know, Lance Warren up at Performance Paint and Auto. Big shout out to him. He's an awesome guy. So just a quick few shout outs. And, you know, if you are having any sort of trouble, go talk to Gary. Go talk to somebody. Find somebody to figure it out, because everybody's dealing with something. You'll be much happier in the end. So thanks a lot. Make some friends. Talk about people. Go read up on the Congo and the stuff happening like that, because, you know, you need to help your fellow man.
Agreed.
See you guys.
Peace out.